I know in your head, you guys can't wait to get out of here. All you're thinking is, when do I get to the beer at the back? Okay, so for my part, I'm going to do my bit and keep it short and sweet. All right, I got 10 minutes. I'm going to stick to that. What I need for you guys to do is two things. Number one, if there's something I say that makes sense, please nod your heads. Okay? It's really so much better to speak to people who are alive compared to dosing people. Number two, if you have to yawn and I can see you, please look away. Yawns are very contagious. All right, deal? Say deal. Okay, good. My name is Rachit. I work with a company called Happy Marketer. We do web analytics, SEO, pretty much the same things that everybody else who came up here does. And I'm so thankful I'm here after John because he's done all the introduction work. What I'm going to talk about today is very closely related to what John was talking about, which is using the Google Website Optimizer tool for something creative. And what we did with this tool is something called price testing, which is figuring out how much customers are actually willing to pay rather than just relying on boardroom meetings, right? And I'll talk a little bit about that. But before that, I have a quick story to tell you, okay? And the story is about a guy in prehistoric times. Like most prehistoric men, he had his hobbies of stone cutting and painting on walls and starting fires. But his day job was that of a goat herd, okay? He'd herd goats and rear sheep and then trade these things with other people who grew grain and food. So back in the day, they would trade one thing for another thing. He would trade his goat for pails of grain, food for food. Now, in his head, when he was talking about goats and grains, what was really going on in his head were very complex equations involving price and demand and revenue. Because even back in the day, even early times, everybody wants to get the best deal possible. This guy wants to know that if I'm giving my goat away, I'm getting the maximum amount of grain possible. Getting the optimal price is the holy grail of marketing. Everybody in here wants to charge the maximum amount possible that their customers will tolerate, because that is a free pay raise, right? For no extra effort, you get that 10, 15, 20% raise. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. And it's really important because I had to actually dig up an old economics textbook for these graphs. This is what happens to demand when the price goes up. So as the price rises, the demand for something goes down. So if you want to sell something in large quantities, you want to make it cheap. Sounds simple, right? The problem is, at low prices, the revenue is also low. There's a magic price somewhere, an optimal price that maximizes the revenue. And it's every business's dream to find that. And we try to move graphs together and turn them around to find that price. But really, there are no new ways of finding that for a long time. Some of the common ways of doing this, okay, the most common way is strategic guessing, where a bunch of management people sit in the boardroom and then hippos butt heads. One says it should be this price, one says it should be the other price. There's usually competitive intelligence behind that, and there's a lot of insight, but at the end of the day, there's not much data. Another popular way is customer surveys. You get a whole bunch of people, fill out a few forms. The problem is, customers lie. What they do is often different from what they say. So you can't trust that too much. And then, there are expensive ways for really large companies. Slow rollout. McDonald's will roll out a product somewhere at a certain price. If it works, they'll roll it out somewhere else. But for most companies sitting in this room, that's a big challenge because it's pretty expensive. And that's where Google Website Optimizer comes in, because it makes it affordable. It's very, very accurate data, and it's fast to implement. So that's why we recommended they use Google Website Optimizer to a client named Genopal. They are launching, this was a few years ago, they were launching a software product. And about 72 hours before the launch, we get a call saying, I can't decide the price point. They narrowed it down to 3 price points, but they didn't know which one to choose. And they wanted some data to back it up. And that's when we thought Google Website Optimizer was spanking new then, and we were just dying to use it somewhere. So we threw it in there to try to collect some data. And They had a pretty normal website, had a home page. From the home page, you'd go on to the rest of the site where you'd see a few buttons that say buy now. And then eventually you'd land up on the buy page, which was the start of the checkout process. It's a pretty typical e-commerce setup. And you don't need anything more than that for price testing. What you do need, and this is very important, is one thing. You have to minimize the noise on the website. When you're testing price, it can fluctuate the conversions wildly. So what you want to do is you want to vary only the price. If possible, keep everything else static. For this client, we varied just one button that said buy it now, and then we changed the price. So different customers saw different versions of that button. Everything else on the website was the same. The product packaging, the product name, the unique selling points, everything else, just this changed. So what we were able to do was get a warning. Oh, sorry. I see a warning here that says presentation ends in a few minutes. What we were able to do is show different customers different versions of the price and then measure how many of them went through the purchase. So it gave us a good idea of if we roll this out on a larger scale, how many of them would end up buying and how many wouldn't. And the results were very interesting. We tested 3 price points, $24.95, $29.95, and $39.95. I can't show you the exact numbers, but in relative terms, for every 100 items we'd sell at $24.95, the number dropped to half that at $29.95. And for every 100 items we'd sell at $24.95, the number dropped to 1/20th of that at $39.95. And the impact on revenue was equally impressive. If you'd make $100 selling at $24.95, you'd only make $60 selling at $29.95, and just $8 selling at $39.95. So based on the data we got, we kind of figured out that we'd get twice as many item sales at $24.95 and 66% more revenue. We also tested a couple of other important things, mainly the message on the home page. What you see at the bottom of that slide is the first thing people see when they come into that website. So the first thing they see is a big headline, then they see a picture, and then they see a call to action, which is that button. All right, we'd already tested that call to action button. We wanted to test the headline as well as the button, the image. So we got 3 versions of these 2 elements going. We had 3 versions of the headline, and we had 3 versions of that image. And what we found was one of the headlines performed 42% better than the original headline. And one of the images performed 27% better than the original image. And when we put all those changes together, the conversion rate of the site went up from 2.6% to 3.8%. And if you think about it, that's really stunning for a small business. Because with no more effort spent on buying traffic, on driving people there, you now get 33% more people buying. That's $33 for every $100 that just goes into the company paycheck, right? And passes down to everybody down there. And if your business could get even a 5, 10, 15% boost by doing testing with no extra traffic, wouldn't that be worth pursuing? So, to summarize, I promised I'd be quick. The process of this was that we recommended that they use online testing and Google Website Optimizer because we can get that data and we can do it quick. We showed the price in very few places to keep the noise as minimal. And the results were as follows. We got a nice conversion rate bump. It gave us some preliminary information about the pricing, although it does come with a little legal tagline at the bottom. We only had 72 hours to test. So our confidence in that information wasn't great. So even though we could show them the data, we couldn't make recommendations based on that. And that's a very common problem in the APAC and small business scenario, because we don't get millions of visitors a month, right? Most of us struggle with a few thousand if we're lucky, and that's not enough data to make decisions quickly. So the last slide I want to leave you with is 3 things that you should do to get better data, to get more statistically significant data, to get data that you can have confidence in, right? The first thing is be patient. It's easier said than done, but essentially you have to wait for the results to become strong and statistically significant. And Google Website Optimizer has a very nice visual tool for that. Your bars change from yellow to green. Okay, so unless you're colorblind, in which case you should work with someone who can see colors, you should be able to read the results of that. The second thing is, if you don't get too much traffic, limit your test to the pages with the highest amount of traffic. So start with a home page or a really popular landing page that you have a campaign going behind. Okay? Forget an insignificant page somewhere. Nobody needs to know whether the legal disclaimer page can get better or not. Just focus on the really important pages. And then the next point is the most important point. If you leave with nothing else with this presentation, just leave with this. Start testing with the big things. Okay? Start testing with things that could really make a difference to your business. The price can really make a difference to your business. The first USP or the first marketing message on the homepage they see could really make a difference to your business. The major structure and format of the page, is it 2-column or 3-column? And the major call to actions that you have on the page. These things can really impact your business. The color of a text link somewhere at the bottom, not really. Whether they use Arial font or Verdana font, not as important. Start with the really big things. And when you start doing that, the results will start justifying themselves. So I hope something here was useful, and I don't get a warning, so I think I finished in time. If you want to talk to me or anyone behind us, just head on to happymarketer.com. And you've been a great audience. Derek?